Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors.
And paves the way for a new history.
Dobry večer, good afternoon, evening, or morning, or wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to Tochnyi and Shashli Vovovila Vodnia to all our Ukrainian teammates who are rightly celebrating at home with their families right now, to all our Ukrainian audience members who are celebrating Easter today. Today, in addition to our weekly updates from our individual dedicated analysts, Tochnyi is going to bring you stories of sacrifice, endurance, and resolution from Ukraine and its cherished city of Mariupol. We're going to bring you both research, analysis, and testimony about Ukraine and Mariupol. We were going to bring you an interview with Petro Andrushenko, the advisor to the mayor of Mariupol, this week. It's been delayed for a week, but this will be happening at this time next week, so please stay tuned for that interview. We've got a fair few things to cover today, so please like and subscribe to get Tochny's latest research, which seems to be almost everywhere these days, and Tochny's forthcoming project announcements. We're going to go straight now to the subject of Mariupol and the analysis that our colleague and contributor Alex has been researching on. Alex, welcome back. Over to you.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to be back tonight. I've been working on the interview this week, which we are going to send soon. That's really interesting. It's almost 1 hour of chat about this current situation in Mariupol with Petro Andrushenko. So it will be really interesting for everybody. So today we're just going to briefly cover some of the latest news from the city. It will not be a long segment, but it will be, well, an opportunity to see what is going on there, and it's not nice, unfortunately. So if Maurice can start with the first video. Here we see a video from this week. It's a video that has been shared on local Telegram channels, and that's a building block in Kuprina 75 on the west side of the city, pretty close to Nevsky, the new quarter built by the Russians. What we see here is a new demolition. As we said already, Russians have demolished more or less 450 to 460 buildings in Mariupol, and I am just talking about high-rise blocks buildings, not private houses. Kuprina 75 has been a symbol of resistance in the city because people has been living there until January, February this year. On the block, on the outside, they wrote writings several times to say that they were trying to keep their houses. I had pictures saying, without bribes, they will destroy the house, or they cut off electricity and water. People live inside, but they refuse to help with reparations. So this building being demolished is really affecting everyone who care about Mariupol resistance, because it had become a symbol during the past 2 years. Now, I do not know what happened to those people, but of course they had to leave their apartments. So it's extremely sad. And by the way, to the 450 buildings that have been already demolished, we know that Russians are planning to add around 300 more. And you are going to see next other examples of what has been going on this week just about demolitions inside of the city. So Maurice, now you
Alex,
can...
can I interrupt and ask you a really quick question?
Sure.
The on this day of Ukrainian Easter, Mariupol, it's seen by some as a city which has held back that tide of Russia's initial invasion. So many Ukrainian lives were sacrificed there, yet there's this eternal, this permanence to Mariupol's legacy, which is of a Ukrainian heritage. Can you give us a sense of changes that you've noticed on your map? Anything of interest?
Well, of course, Russians are trying to cancel everything that is Ukrainian, starting from the people. And in the interview, Petro was very open about that. And we are going to hear from his words next week. So one of the questions to him was, how many of the original people are still living in the city? And he told me that they calculated that from more than 500,000 people that were living in Mariupol, there are only about 80,000 left. And most of them are, of course, elderly people. So the city has been changing starting from the population. They consider to have about 150,000 people living in the city. He said that currently they see the second wave of invasion, so the second wave of Russian moving to the city. And of course, all the symbols of Ukraine are being removed. For example, well, I believe I showed this already the first time we showed my map 3 weeks ago. In front of Azovstal, there was a monument to the workers. And that was one of not the first thing that Russians restored, but they were working on that. And they replaced it, and he carved out a similar monument, but showing the communist insignia. And in my opinion, it's almost a way to cancel everything that happened in the period between the Soviet Union and today, which is basically recent Ukraine. So right now, I don't have too many examples in my mind, but I have seen many that I could share. I could actually make a presentation about that in the future. But for sure, they are changing the face of Mariupol, and they are doing the same in all the occupied territories. No doubt about that. So perhaps now we can move on to the presentation, and I'm going to show you something more about the demolitions that are going on. And I'm talking about demolitions that happened during last week. So we have had 2 years of demolitions before today, and now there is more happening. So what we see here is the Dosaf building. I'm not sure that's the right way to pronounce it. It's behind the drama theater, next to the sea, basically in front of Azovstal, on the other side of the river. That's how it looked like before the invasion. On the right-hand side, you have a winning project to restore and renovate the building and the square in front of that. So you see, it would have been nice and modern. The project was actually from German architects, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. If we go to the next slide, you see how it looked like during the siege of Mariupol on April 12th, 2022. So we were towards the end of the battle of the city, within the city. Of course, there was more than 1 month left of fightings around Azovstal, but you see it was destroyed. And please notice that hole on the left of the windows. And then you got a picture that was taken April 13th, so 5 days ago. It was being demolished. Now nothing is left, as we are going to see on the next picture here. I got a bit emotional. You see the situation in February. Of course, it was in ruins, but at least it was there. And on May 2nd, 3 days ago, it was gone. Now, somebody in Mariupol says it's nice to see Azov Sea there, but of course it's a tragedy. So you have to imagine any time that you see a recent picture of Mariupol. I've seen one that I was almost going to share tonight, but I said no, it's going to be too complicated to explain if I don't have enough supporting materials. But in that picture, you see the center of Mariupol, and it looks like a new city. But what I can see there, because I've seen so many pictures of the city, is the buildings that are missing. And here you got a perfect example in front of you. You had that building, perhaps it was not the nicest building before the war, but it was part of the history heritage of the city. And now it's gone. And before, in the previous slide, I said to you, please notice that hole on the left. You can still see that. You can still see that in the picture before it was demolished. So in the next slide. So of course there were no reparations made at all. They decided from day one that they were going to remove it. And by the way, this picture is taken on the backside of the drama theater, or what is left of it. They are working on it, they are restoring it, they say, but actually at the beginning of April they managed to destroy 8 of the 9 statues that were on top of the front facade of the drama theater, so they are gone as well. Now everything that is left of the drama theater, at least of its original parts, is what you can see in my avatar. So really, really few elements. And by the way, the street that starts from the Duzov building that we are watching at and goes to the drama theater and then on and on until the new Russian Quarter is a very long road, was called Miru Avenue, which is the Avenue of Peace. But now Russians have renamed it to Lenin Avenue. So they're bringing the city back to the communist age. We can go on to the next one. And now we can see more demolitions of civilian buildings. This one, I didn't put a date on that, but it's either from today or from yesterday. This was a civilian building in Azovstalska 22, and that's on the left bank of the city. and it is in an area that we are going to see soon, but we can remain on this slide for a second, that has been totally wasted. It was in front of the eastern entrance of Azovstal, so it was one of the last part of the city that the defenders left during the Battle of Mariupol before they had to get into Azovstal for the last month of the battle. And really, there is nothing left. When I was mapping this area, there are some buildings that even in the older pictures, just after the battle, they were there were no ruins. If you look at Google Maps, you cannot understand that there were ever any buildings there. It was just dust, more or less. And if you see on the left picture, just there in front of where the building was, there were tram trucks, but now they are gone. For some reason, Russians have removed the trucks from the left bank of the city. And people is making questions of why. On Twitter I made a joke because you know that they are displaying one or two of the tram wagons in Moscow these days, like I don't know. I believe they're doing that because they want to show the crimes of Ukrainian Nazis. So they are showing a tram that they say was destroyed by Ukrainians, which doesn't really make any sense. And the joke that I made on Twitter was that, okay, perhaps now I understand why they had to steal the trucks from Mariupol, because they have the tram in Moscow. So, well, it's very sad, to be honest. So we can we can go on to the next slide. I'm going to show you a little bit of the area where Azovstalska 22 used to be. So you see here, everything, all the red marks are demolished buildings that I could confirm with pictures, either from ground or from satellite. So just on the left bottom corner, you see that quadrant. I believe I counted once 48 buildings that are gone. And now Azovstalska 22 is the one at the center, which is highlighted. And I know from other pictures that I cannot share because they are from satellite and do not have rights, that other buildings on the left are also being demolished. So a huge area of the city has been cancelled. For sure, one day Russians are going to build something there. I have no doubts about that. There are plenty of resources. But if you think of how many apartments and how many families lost their houses and got their lives destroyed there, that's terrible. So we can go on. This is a bit more of an OSINT picture. And here we see a recent picture from the port of Mariupol. And it's of new concrete fortifications that are in the port. And according to the local sources, they write that they are being sent to the Berdyansk district. So I'm not a military expert. I'm just showing you this as a more war-related news that is happening in Mariupol these days. And by the way, sorry, I didn't include in the presentation, but I read on several channels that 9 Russian occupiers were killed this week in Mariupol by poisoning. And what is interesting there is that on one side we have Ukrainians that are claiming that we killed them. And Russians are saying that they were poisoned by people from Central Asia that are planning terrorist attacks during the May festivities. Of course, they are they're having high attention to this after what happened in Moscow last month. And currently, there are a lot of police actions against people from Central Asia. I mean, they are Russians from Central Asians that are in occupied territories as construction workers. But there are videos, and also Petro during the interview talks about that there are police actions against these people where they are being collected, and according to Ukrainians, they are made disappear because they are taken to fight on the front. I have no other confirmation than his words. I can believe that this is true. So there is a bit of tension within Russian, also because of what happened in Moscow last month. If you move to the next slide, we will see the same from satellite picture and from different angulations. So if we have anyone who is more military expert and wants to comment about the fortification now or later, they are free to talk. And then we can move to the last topic that I have about Mariupol tonight. Here, what you see here is the tap water in Mariupol. You see the filter on top that was perfectly white when the video started, and now after 10 seconds it's getting brown, and it gets more and more brown. The video is about 1 minute long, and you can imagine how long this filter can last. And there have been several articles in the local channels and on the local news site about the water in Mariupol because the situation is extremely bad. And Russians have even claimed that the quality of the water is excellent. People don't have to worry about that. Everything is perfect. But the issue here is that currently the water of Mariupol is taken from a reservoir from Stary Krim, which is a small place north of Mariupol. But normally the water of Mariupol should come from the Siversky Donets, a river on the east of the city. Of course, it's impossible due to current situation and fightings and damages to get water from the Siversky Donets. So Russians for 3 years have been using the reservoir, but as Petro explained to me, it's not meant to be used so much. It cannot provide enough water to the whole city. And when the pumps approach the bottom sediments, the sediment enters the pipe and then they cannot be stopped by the old filters. It was never meant to be used in that way and so massively. So they're also reporting about health issues due to the poor quality of the water. Some of the people say that you cannot even use it, even if you boil it, it doesn't get good enough. So that's an extremely concerning aspect of the situation. And this is everything that I had on my side for tonight. I hope you enjoyed that, even if there was nothing nice about that.
Today, we're going to bring you research into Ukrainian paintings stolen by the Russian occupying forces in 2022. works by Ukrainian artist Arkhip Kuinji. Works which, prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, were housed here, at the Kuinji Art Museum in Mariupol. Arkhip Ivanovich Kuinji was born in January of 1842 in Mariupol. His name stems from the Mariupolitan Greek translation, Master of Horses. He grew up in a poor family. His father was a Mariupolitan Greek shoemaker. In case you're wondering, Mariupolitan Greek is a dialect spoken by the ethnic Greeks living along the northern coast of the Sea of Azov. Its orthography is Cyrillic and Greek. The Crimean Peninsula has actually had a Greek-speaking populace for over 2,500 years, owing to its 7th to 6th century BC historical ties with ancient Greek colonies and the later Byzantine Empire. Why is this important? Well, Arkhip Kuinji was part of the rich tapestry that makes up modern Ukraine, and by extension, makes up modern Ukrainian culture. Kuinji was 6 years old when he lost his parents, so he was forced to make a living doing things like working on a church building site, grazing farm animals, and he received the rudiments of an education from a Mariupolitan Greek friend of the family. He then went to a simple local school. In 1855, at age 13 to 14, Kuinji visited Fedosia to study art under Ivan Ivanovsky. That's the same Ivanovsky who painted this picture that was featured in our last episode on the art that the Russians had stolen from the Kherson Museum of Art as they withdrew from Kherson city itself in November of 2022. Kuinji's art captivated people with its vibrancy, earning him the epithet Master of Light. He produced numerous Ukrainian landscape and seascape paintings during his life, including Chematsky Path in Mariupol, painted 1875. The Top of Mount Elbrus in the Sunlight, painted 1908. Tata Scala in Crimea, painted between 1896 and 97. Following Ukrainian independence in 1991, an art gallery in honor of Kuinji was established here at number 58 Heroyevska Street, Mariupol. Here is the Kuinji Museum before the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. At the time these photos were taken, the museum's comprehensive collection included 650 paintings, 960 pieces of graphic art, 150 sculptures, and over 300 other items of art. The museum's open spaces served as venues for various cultural events such as lectures, music evenings, film screenings, highlighting individual Ukrainian artists and their work. However, all of this abruptly ceased when the Russian armed forces invaded Ukraine on February the 24th, 2022. On March the 21st, a Russian bomb struck the museum. 3 original Kuinji paintings were thought to be housed here at the museum at this time. When the Russians looted Mariupol, they went looking specifically for Kuinji paintings. On April the 25th, Russians wearing balaclavas stormed into places such as the Kuinji Art Museum, demanding, "Where are the Kuinjis?" This is the point where Tochny's research into what the Russians stole from here in Mariupol begins. Two questions are salient at this point. Whilst destroying Mariupol, why did the Russians want to steal Ukrainian artist Arhip Kuinji's paintings? Which Kuinji paintings are we talking about here? Can we determine if the Russians actually stole them, or if they were destroyed by the Russians' own shelling, burning, and widespread destruction of Mariupolitan buildings, such as number 58, Heroyoivska Street, the Kuinji Museum itself, that you can see pictured here. Incidentally, if you recognise this painting, it's called The Autumn Slush. Kuinji painted it in 1870. So, how much is one Kuinji painting worth? Well, in 2008, a buyer paid $392,532 for this Kuinji painting that you can see in front of you now. It's called Paysage Russe, and it was sold at auction house Egudes in France. So the question of why can be answered with theft. This is Russians stealing Ukrainian property and stealing Ukrainian possessions that did not belong to Russians. But in addition to dishonestly appropriating property belonging to Ukrainians, is there another reason? Yes, the Russians have systematically erased, destroyed, or dishonestly appropriated Ukrainian culture wherever they have occupied and continue to do so. The Russians demolished this monument to Arhip Kuinji in Mariupol. Prior to this, they had destroyed and renamed a street that had been named after him. So why did they destroy the monument, but nick the paintings? Cambridge University expert on Russian imperialism, Molly Arbuthnot, concluded this self-evident fact, that the Russians' removal of the Kuinji paintings from Mariupol is, quote, part of the Russians' deliberate erasure of Ukrainian culture. In other words, this is theft, avarice, rapacity, and cultricide, the systematic destruction of a culture, particularly one unique to a specific ethnicity or a political, religious, or social group. So, which paintings can we determine were stolen? The Kuinji paintings in question today are Red Sunset on the Dnipro, Mount Elbrus in the Sunlight, Autumn in Crimea, and a reproduction of Moonlit Night at Sea. Here's Red Sunset on the Dnipro in the Kuinji Gallery in 2021. The Russians, as we have seen with their deportation of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children into Russia, and their own alleged captivity of millions of other Ukrainians, the Russians publicize their crimes. So did the Russians publicize their theft of these paintings? Yes, they did. This man is a Russian named Alexander Mozgovoy, inside the Kuinji Museum in February of 2022, when he was a purported television news anchor for the Russian state media outlet Izvestia News. Here's some of Mozgovoy's recent work after his promotion in Russian state media from the 26th of February 2024. It's called The Everyday Life of Stormtroopers, and it's about how he visited a training ground in the Zaporizhia region where he met with a Russian airborne assault regiment named the Novorossiysk Mountain Airborne Formation. Mozgovoy, along with a man named Zeldyakov, who claimed to be his photographer at the time, but we'll come to him later, are at this point significant. Also important is the woman you see here, Natalia Kapushnikova, the director of another museum in Mariupol. Here she is, standing in front of the Khuvynji Museum as it was being looted by the Russians, next to a portrait of Arkhip Khuvynji by Grigory Kalmykov, another Ukrainian artist, by the way, which was painted in 1910. A painting which is being preserved here, propped up against the gate of the museum before being loaded onto that Russian truck we saw earlier. Originally, on March the 20th, 2022, as Russia's armed forces committed its litany of systematic destruction of Ukrainian lives and property in Mariupol, the chairman of the Ukrainian Union of Artists, Konstantin Chernavsky, claimed, perhaps in an attempt to throw the Russians off the trail, that the 3 Khuvynji paintings were not in the Khuvynji Museum at the time of Russia's March bombing of the museum, but had instead been moved to a, quote, secret location. This location, it transpired, was well known by Natalia Kapushnikova, the director of the other museum. Kapushnikova knew the exact secret storage place of the Khuvynji paintings, and on April the 25th, with comportment confected for Russian media personnel led by Alexander Mozgovoy, Ms. Kapushnikova, claiming she was trying to protect the paintings, turned out to be extremely willing to help them. The secret storage place of these priceless works of Ukrainian art turned out to be her home. Here is Natalia Kapushnikova at her house in Mariupol, unpacking for the camera, with help, looted Ukrainian paintings from Mariupol. See if you can spot anything familiar. That's right, that's the top of Mount Elbrus in sunlight, by Arkhip Khuvynji. That's a painting that looks remarkably like Moonlit Night at Sea. And something else rather Khuvynji-esque. And autumnal. And there is Red Sunset on the Dnipro by Arkhip Khuvynji. And in case you're wondering, that is the look of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. You might be wondering, who is the man standing next to her? You know, this man here, the man holding up that priceless Ukrainian painting the Russians stole from Mariupol. And this man here, loading the stolen Ukrainian paintings into that Russian truck outside the museum of Arkhip Khuvynji. The guy ordering the man in the balaclava where to put the stolen Ukrainian painting. His name is Mikhail Zeltikov. And here he is on Russian state television, appearing as the, quote, Minister of Culture for the internationally unrecognized and currently Russian-occupied territories of the so-called DPR. And here's Alexei Mozgovoy posing with Red Sunset on the Dnipro. Back in Mariupol, Zeltikov was the mere assistant to Mozgovoy. Quite the career change. So where did these paintings go after the Russians stole them from Mariupol? Meet Lena Garmash, the head of the, quote, Donetsk History Museum, and someone who helpfully admitted to handling stolen goods. At the end of June 2022, Lena Garmash accidentally mentioned that a total of 25 paintings from Mariupol, including 3 Khuvynjis, were being stored here. Here's Lena Garmash at her museum, with her specs on the table. Here's Lena Garmash sitting on the right at a cultural event in St. Petersburg at the end of 2022. Here's Lena Garmash, second from left, at an event in Moscow. And who might that be on the right in this picture but Natalia Kapushnikova? So one possibility as to where these Arkhip Kuinji paintings ended up is this place, in Donetsk. Another possibility is these stolen Ukrainian paintings are in the country which launched this genocidal war in Ukraine, Russia. The paintings can't be sold on the international market. Anyone trying to sell them outside Russia would be arrested. Natalia Kapushnikova, however, is on an EU sanctions list. Those sanctions are growing every day of her life. Arkhip Kuinji's paintings are items of Ukrainian heritage, which are treasured by Ukraine and Ukrainians. And this is one of the reasons, along with avarice, malice, rapacity, is why the Russians stole them. The search for them, and every item stolen by Russia, is, like the paintings themselves, timeless. Okay, and on that note, I will hand over to Joseph.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan, that was really good.
I managed to identify the individuals who had their hands on stolen Kuinji paintings and 3 possible locations where they are.
I'm really impressed, man. This is my first time watching it as just like the audience. So yeah, I'm really impressed. I hope the audience is as well. Yeah, great job. So without any further delay, aside from my astonishment, we'll get straight to the news. I shouldn't say astonishment that Jonathan made like a good segment. Just clearly a lot of effort went into that, and I'm impressed. I thought it was like like a little a thing on Koenji. I didn't realize it was such an extensive investigation. So I'm impressed right now. Okay, news. Back to the news. Ukraine is anticipating 38 billion US dollars in financial assistance from global partners following the completion of conditions outlined in an International Monetary Fund initiative, as stated by the governor of the National Bank of Ukraine on May 4th. In a Facebook video, Andriy Pishny highlighted that Russia's complete invasion of Ukraine has resulted in 1/3 of a reduction in the nation's economy and extensive destruction amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars. This has created an immense need for fiscal support. External aid is paramount, and last year Ukraine received 42.5 billion in external financing. And Pishny noted that Ukraine has successfully completed so far 3 assessments under the IMF program and has met corresponding structural benchmarks, and that a 4th review is forthcoming. On April 18th, the IMF projected that Ukraine would require around 42 billion this year in international aid to support its budget. And speaking from Washington, the IMF manager, Kristalina Georgieva, expressed confidence in achieving the goal, but underscored the necessity of resolving Ukraine's economic challenges, contingent, of course, primarily on halting the full-scale invasion. On May 3rd, the National Bank of Ukraine unveiled its most extensive set of currency liberalization measures since the onset of the full-scale invasion. These measures are designed to alleviate constraints on businesses and currency controls. In 2022, Ukraine imposed stringent controls on its currency and tightly regulated foreign exchanges in an effort to prevent the collapse of their currency, the hryvnia. NBU Governor Andriy Pishny remarked that the measures are in conjunction with other initiatives by the NBU and are intended to enable Ukrainian businesses to operate at full capacity and facilitate the attraction of private investment for economic recovery. And here's a list of the measures that they took in this package. Removal of all currency restrictions, authorization for businesses to repatriate newly earned dividends, permission to transfer funds abroad for rental or leasing purposes, relaxations of restrictions on repaying external loans, authorization to settle interest payments on existing external loans, ease of limitations on transferring foreign currency from branch offices to parent companies. In other words, all of these restrictions were imposed at the start of the full-scale invasion. Most of them have been like partially lifted or lifted, basically. The Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Denis Bashlik, disclosed on May 3rd that 250 million USD is earmarked for the reconstruction and enhancement of Ukraine's agricultural sector through the newly launched USAID Harvest Initiative. Estimations by the Kyiv School of Economics and the World Bank indicate that the losses and damages inflicted upon Ukraine's agricultural sector by Russia's full-scale invasion exceed 80 billion as of February this year. Bashlik elaborated that the program, supported by the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, will specifically assist small grain and oilseed producers and broaden their export markets. USAID Deputy Administrator Isabel Coleman outlined that the Harvest program sets ambitious targets, aiming to boost agricultural outputs in Ukraine by 1.5 billion and attract an additional 500 million in private investment for Ukraine. Coleman emphasized that the agency is pivoting towards addressing the future needs of Ukraine's agriculture sector with a focus on supporting export diversification and products that are of higher value added. In other words, like seed oil versus just straight sunflower seeds, right? Was like an example of a higher value added product. I don't know specifically what they're talking about there, though. Economy Minister Yulia Svyrdenko revealed that in April, Ukraine exported more than 13 million tons of products valued at about 3.3 billion, which surpasses the volumes recorded in February 2022, and that the growth was reportedly facilitated by opening alternative sea corridors as well as ship insurance programs under the solidarity lanes. Ukraine has observed a 20% increase in agricultural trade following the termination of the Polish blockade, as reported by First Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food for Ukraine, Taras Vysotskyi, in a recent interview with Ukrainian radio. The blockade imposed by Polish farmers in 2023 disrupted the flow of Ukrainian aid and goods, including crucial drone parts, by obstructing border checkpoints and impeding truck movements, which disrupted port and road operations. The action ultimately benefited Russia by destabilizing Ukraine's economy, and I would argue ultimately harmed Poland more even than Ukraine, because like they are selling more goods to Ukraine than the reverse. Last month, Polish farmers ceased their protests at the final blocked border crossing with Ukraine. However, Ukrainian agricultural production still faces new restrictions imposed by Poland. Since the farmers vacated the checkpoints, Ukraine has witnessed an uptick in trade volume, as I mentioned, around 20%. Vysotskyi outlined Ukraine's efforts to resolve the border situation and cited engagements between Ukraine's agrarian associations and Polish ministerial bodies at the end of March. Basically, he summarized by saying it was like a tense dialogue, but they substantiated with data that Ukrainian farmers pose no threat to Polish farmers. And consequently, several sector-specific intermediary meetings were held, leading to agreements that were finalized on April 23rd. And there was a total resolution on the situation. And there's like a final meeting scheduled for May 7th to sort of, finalize everything. So he expressed hope that cooperation established between Poland and Ukraine during the blockade would facilitate future mutually beneficial solutions and prevent further crises in the future. So I, for one, am really hoping this is the end of the Polish blockade, and of course that the Ukrainian and Polish economies will benefit from that. And also, I no longer have to pronounce the name of Polish checkpoints, please. Okay, on to stuff about Russia this week. Russian state-owned energy giant Gazprom experienced a significant financial setback in 2023, reporting a net loss of 629 billion rubles, which is around 6.9 billion US dollars. This marked the company's largest profit decline in decades and is attributed to declining gas prices and limited access to the European market. The company's international earnings report, released on May 2nd, revealed a net loss of 6.84 billion. And it's contrasting the net income they had of about 13 billion in 2022. So that's a 40% decrease in revenue from gas sales within a year. This marks their first annual net loss report since 1999, according to Bloomberg. The European Union's efforts to reduce reliance on Russian gas supplies since the onset of the full-scale invasion have impacted their traditional revenue streams from the European market. The Financial Times notes that Russia's share of European gas imports plummeted from 40% in 2021 to 8% in 2023. In response to diminishing market shares from Europe, Russia has been compelled to export natural gas at reduced prices and explore new markets. The Russian Economic Ministry recently published a report setting the price of gas exports to China at 257 US dollars per 1,000 cubic meters, which is much lower than the price they were paying in Western markets, about $320 for the same amount. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, AHUR, has reported a significant exodus of Nepalese mercenaries from the Russian army units engaged in combat in Ukraine. According to intelligence gathered, the Department of Nepalese mercenaries from the military unit 29328 of the Russian Armed Forces was prompted by substantial casualties in meat assaults, the brutality of field commanders, which they said included extrajudicial executions for refusing suicidal orders, and the failure to receive promised payment. Russian forces are actively scouring temporarily occupied territories, particularly in the Luhansk region, where the unit is stationed, in search of the deserters. However, these efforts have largely proven futile. Reports submitted by the leaders of Russian Motorized Rifle Infantry Unit 2 Higher Command attribute the desertion of Nepalese troops to an alleged return to their home country due to the earthquake. Nonetheless, returning from the occupied Luhansk region to Nepal independently poses significant challenges for these people. Additionally, Nepalese citizens may face legal consequences in their homeland for participating in hostilities against Ukraine as part of the Russian army. And this has been mentioned by their government before. Just a bunch of Nepalese mercenaries now loose in the occupied territories. Russia doesn't know what's going on there. Despite facing sanctions, Russia has succeeded in procuring nearly 2,000 components for its fighter aircraft from 200 companies spanning 22 nations. The information originates from Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Report and was conveyed by Ekonomichna Pravda, which is a Ukrainian publication about economics, of course. Specifically, the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission in Ukraine conducted an analysis encompassing about 2,000 components utilized in various Russian Air Force aircraft, including MiG-31s, Su-27s, Su-30s, Su-35s, and Su-57s. In 2023, the Russian Federation allocated $4 billion towards acquiring electronics for diverse military applications, with a significant focus on fighter maintenance and production. According to the findings, the majority of the components continue to be sourced from Western countries, involving around 244 companies and 22 nations. The U.S. stands out as the primary supplier, accounting for 64% of imported components. Other notable contributors include Japan, Switzerland, Germany, France, the UK, Taiwan, and the Netherlands. Conversely, Russia obtains components for its fighters from only 13 Chinese enterprises. And an investigation by Radio Liberty suggests that in 2024, Russian manufacturers may confront a shortage of Western components and will actively pursue avenues to secure them through other means. This is because substituting them with Chinese or Russian alternatives while adhering to their aircraft's construction standards necessitates in order to adhere to the construction standards of these quality of chips, they would need to design entirely new aircraft, right? Like they need the Western chips, basically. Leading manufacturers in this realm of chips include Texas Instruments, Murata Manufacturing, Analog Devices. There's a bunch of them. The Russian Federation procured components worth around $1 billion from these firms in 2023, and that was a 20% decline, from 2022, but a 70% surge from before the full-scale invasion. The survey also indicates that 58 major Russian companies import their goods via third countries. So they uncovered supply networks for these electronics involving intermediaries in Hungary, Cyprus, Turkey, China, and Russia. Not sure how you can have an intermediary company in Russia, but I just report the news. On the morning of May 1st, the Russian Telegram channel Astra reported that the Ryazan refinery in Russia had been targeted by UAVs during the night. Locals claim that following the attack, a fire erupted at the facility. Ryazan Oblast Governor Pavlo Malkov stated that an investigation is underway at the scene. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, Russian air defenses intercepted and destroyed 6 Ukrainian UAVs overnight into May 1st. We don't have to really take them at their word that they intercepted all of them, but it's usually a good indication that these are probably the places that Ukraine attacked when Ukraine themselves don't confirm it, which they, as far as I know, haven't done so this time. So 3 over Voronezh Oblast, 1 over Ryazan, and 1 over Belgorod, and also 1 over Kursk. That's probably accurate that Ukraine probably struck those with drones. A series of drone attacks launched by Ukraine on oil refineries deep inside Russia has put the Kremlin on the defensive, forcing it to protect its own territory while simultaneously continuing its aggression against Ukraine. However, the attacks have led to an unexpected outcome, causing shortages in the fuel supply for the world's largest oil producing country, as per a recent article from Politico. According to government data, diesel prices for Russian consumers have surged, increasing nearly 10% in the past week. Petrol costs have also risen to a 6-month high, rising more than 20% since the beginning of the year due to tightening supply and the suspension of production at numerous facilities. I should also mention there was a flood, that's kind of unrelated to everything, that also flooded out another refinery and probably choked up a lot of critical logistics for their oil stuff. Last Wednesday, 2 fuel storage facilities owned by Russian energy giant Rosneft, located 500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, sustained damage from drone strikes, resulting in a significant loss of fuel. And similar attacks have targeted over a dozen Russian refineries in 9 regions this year. Philip Ingram, a former British military intelligence officer and NATO planner, likened the impact of these attacks to that of persistent mosquitoes, draining resources and alleviating pressure from Russia's front lines. Consequently, Moscow has significantly reduced its fuel exports to near record lows, shipping just over 712,000 tons of diesel and gas compared to 844,000 tons during the same period last year. So in other words, they're down about 150,000. This fuel shortage is a political and military challenge. Cheap fuel has been a crucial element for Vladimir Putin's regime, serving as a counterbalance to low wages and a weak currency. Analysts predict that fuel prices in general are unlikely to decrease in the near future, and that Russia might need to import gasoline from reserves stored in Belarus, which I think that they have been. Last year, Russia imposed a ban on petrol and diesel exports, and the ban was reinstated in March following Ukrainian drone strikes. While Western countries have halted imports of refined Russian fuel, some countries in the Middle East, South America, North Africa, and other places continue to purchase it, either for re-export or to take advantage of the lower prices that Russia is forced to offer it at. The Norwegian government, I've kept in a bunch of Norwegian names and pronunciations here, mostly just to irritate our one Norwegian contributor, Erland, who is, of course, sick this week, and he can't stop me from pronouncing Norwegian things horribly. So this is dedicated to Erland, and we hope he feels better. The Norwegian government has contributed an additional NOK 7 billion or 629 million USD in assistance. I think that's Norwegian kroner, but I don't know what their currency is, to Ukraine following approval by their country's parliament. This increase raises Norway's total direct support to Ukraine in 2024 by nearly 2 billion US dollars. So again, this is an increase in 629 million, the total this year, 2 billion. Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre and Finance Minister Trygve Slagsvold Vedum announced this decision during a press briefing on Norway's aid to Ukraine at the Storting, which is their parliament, on April 30th, as reported by E24. According to Støre, the extra funds will be allocated for military assistance and civilian purposes, about 540 million for military and 90 billion for civilian. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated the funds designated for military support would mainly be used for air defense capabilities. Støre underscored the equipment is already, the defense equipment for air defense is already manufactured and will be swiftly made available for Ukraine. Ukraine's interest in acquiring the MQ-9 Reaper reconnaissance drone from the United States has surged in recent months, moving to its forefront for procurement. According to Politico, the heightened interest in the drones comes as Ukraine prepares for summer operations and explores new methods to identify Russian targets deep within enemy territory. While the MQ-9 Reaper has long been a focal point for Ukraine since the onset of the full-scale invasion, recent developments indicate an increased interest. With sources familiar with the matter emphasize that Ukraine primarily seeks Reapers for reconnaissance purposes, abandoning previous intentions for strikes and surveillance. Industry insiders and individuals knowledgeable about Ukrainian requests underscore that while the desire for drones is not novel, it's gained significance as Ukraine endeavors to secure any tactical advantage they can on the battlefield. Politico reports that the United States remains hesitant to provide the MQ-9 Reaper, citing concerns about the potential for Russian interception. In 2022, a bipartisan congressional group urged the U.S. Department of Defense to furnish Ukraine with advanced drones such as the MQ-9A Reaper, or back then it was actually the MQ-1 Gray Eagle, which at the time, if I recall, is basically just the U.S. Army version of the Reaper. Despite these appeals and requests from Kyiv, the Biden administration opted against supplying Ukraine with advanced drones, citing apprehensions about escalation at the time. Ukraine has made significant. So that's the story about the Reaper drones. Ukraine has made significant strides in press freedom this year, climbing 18 spots to reach the 61st position out of 180 countries in the global press freedom ranking. So again, that's 61st out of 180 in global press freedom, as reported by Ukrinform, citing the World Press Freedom Index, which was released by the international non-government organization Reporters Without Borders. Norway maintains its top position in the press freedom ranking, while Eritrea is the lowest. The advancement in Ukraine's ranking is attributed to improvements in its security sector, particularly a decrease in the number of journalists killed, as well as enhancements in its political indicators. RSF highlighted that countries where press freedom is considered good are predominantly located in Europe, particularly within the European Union, which recently adopted its inaugural media freedom law. The leading nations are Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, and Finland. Challenges persist in Hungary, Malta, and Greece, which are the third lowest ranked. In Eastern Europe, the conditions for journalistic practice continue to deteriorate due to widespread disinformation and censorship targeting media outlets accused, often falsely, of undermining national security and promoting terrorism. This trend is evident in countries like Russia, which is 162nd, Belarus, which is 167th, and Turkmenistan, which is 175th. So they're among the lowest ranking countries in the world. Moreover, Kremlin influence on media censorship extends to nations such as Serbia, Georgia, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Azerbaijan. I'm going to skip. This is just a quick little story. The Lviv region provided 706 drones acquired through a charity auction where they raised 12.5 million hryvnia, which is about 320,000 to military personnel serving in the 125th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So this is pretty common. There's fundraisers like this all over the country. In international relations, the United States has censured Russia's malevolent cyber operations targeting European allies and pledged assistance in bringing the perpetrators to justice. This information was conveyed by Matthew Miller, the spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. Miller denounced the malicious cyber activity conducted by Russia's military intelligence service targeting Germany, Czechia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, and Sweden. In earlier developments on the same day, the EU condemned Russia's malicious cyber campaign against Germany and Czechia. NATO also expressed solidarity with Germany and Czechia in response to cyber attacks perpetrated by a Russian hacker group, indicating readiness to contemplate a unified response to this threat. And I think specifically the threats they're mentioning, if I recall, the Czechia train network was hacked by Russian hackers linked to Russia, and I believe a political party in Germany was hacked. I'm sure German Aid could elaborate on that if he wishes, but the point being, there have been several specific incidents across Europe that involve cyber attacks, and Europe and the United States are, openly and publicly now condemning this and sort of expressing a desire to A, do something about it, and B, maybe address some kind of unified response in some way. Johann Strobel, CEO of Raiffeisen Bank, Raiffeisen Bank. Is that? I hope that's close. Raiffeisen Bank. Raiffeisen. Thank you. Raiffeisen Bank International, or RBI, has announced plans to indicate the implementation of the European Central Bank's directive for significant downsizing of business operations in Russia during the third quarter of 2024. Took you long enough, guys. I know this has been a bank that has been continuously cited as like not pulling out, even continuing expanding operations. So this is kind of a big deal. The information was reported by Russian news outlet RBC and Kommersant. During a conference call with analysts, Strobel stated that there's an expectation that the implementation will begin in the third quarter or earlier. Currently, we are formulating a plan and analyzing what can be done and what will need to be done, and then we'll evaluate the impact it'll have on the results of the group for the coming year. And again, this is basically, as far as I can tell, like a Russian shareholder meeting. So if that's like explains the tone of this. Strobel further elaborated that the downsizing of business in Russia entails nearly ceasing lending activities, with the bank opting to wait for the repayment of existing loans and refraining from issuing new ones, except in a few specific cases. Additionally, he indicated that RBI views selling Russian business as the quickest and most transparent exit strategy from the market. And he noted that over the past 2 years, the group has received expressions of interest from numerous Russian and foreign partners to buy the bank. Furthermore, the Austrian government has reportedly encouraged the bank to withdraw from a deal involving Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska due to concerns about potential repercussions from the U.S. So finally, this bank, RBI International, will be pulling out of Russia, or at least substantially downsizing their commitments there. The European Commission has announced a threefold increase in the support fund for Ukrainian scientists, allocating $4.5 million to sustain ongoing research projects involving their participation. This information was disclosed in a press release published on the European Commission's website, as reported by Ukrinform. The document highlights the Commission's decision to augment the initial budget of the Horizon, so EU Horizon, R-I-Z-O-N, so like Horizon, but Horizon, fellowship program to $4.5 million under the Horizon Europe framework, aiming to provide continuous assistance to Ukrainian researchers amid the challenges and threats posed by Russia's war against Ukraine. So in other words, they've allocated this money specifically to Ukrainian scientists to help them continue to conduct work and research during the invasion. The enhanced support through the Horizon Fellowship Program is intended to significantly benefit the scientists, facilitating the resumption of projects, enabling cutting-edge research endeavors, fostering stable collaboration with international partners, and facilitating wider dissemination of their research outcomes. A total of 65 projects involving 324 Ukrainian scientists stand to benefit directly so far from the fellowship program. And some projects have already commenced, with the latest batch of projects receiving grants as of May 1st. The projects span various scientific disciplines. I won't get into the breakdown, but it's good news, obviously, to hear that the European science community is collaborating closely with Ukraine. According to a UN Sanctions Committee report issued on April 29th and reviewed by Reuters, debris recovered following a missile strike on Kharkiv on January 2nd was traced back to a North Korean Hwasong series ballistic missile, Hwasong 11. I should mention too, John covered that at the time and mentioned this. Both Ukrainian and U.S. officials have previously alleged that Russia has been utilizing North Korean manufactured missiles to conduct attacks in Ukraine. South Korean Defense Minister Shin Wok-sik has also suggested that Russia is possibly acquiring more sophisticated missiles from North Korea, I assume ballistics, which could be deployed in the conflict in Ukraine. The UN report confirms that inspectors determined Russia used missiles obtained from North Korea in an assault on Kharkiv, resulting in the deaths of at least 3 individuals and injuring numerous other people. The inspectors noted that fragments recovered from the missile originated from a North Korean Hwasong 11 missile. Following a field investigation in Kharkiv and an analysis of the missile fragments, the inspectors found no evidence indicating the missile could have been manufactured by Russia. Russia's acquisition of North Korean missiles constitutes a direct violation of UN sanctions. North Korea has emerged as a primary arms supplier to Russia, possibly the reportedly supplying Moscow with substantial military packages, including ballistic missiles and over 3 million artillery shells. There are concerns regarding what Russia may be providing North Korea in exchange for shipments of military equipment and ammunition, and the U.S. has cautioned that Russia has been aiding North Korea in enhancing its military capabilities, potentially encompassing their ballistic missile technology and nuclear technology. On Tuesday evening, the U.S. Senate passed legislation to prohibit the import of enriched uranium from Russia, advancing the bill to the White House, which has expressed its backing for efforts to halt the shipments of reactor fuel from the Kremlin, as reported by Bloomberg. The Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act, endorsed through unanimous consent, would cease U.S. imports 90 days following its enactment, with provisions for temporary waivers until 2028. Russia currently supplies about a quarter of enriched uranium utilized by America's fleet of 90 commercial nuclear reactors and is the primary foreign provider as per U.S. data. These sales contribute to about 1 billion annually to Russia's economy, and replacing the supply could pose challenges and elevate the costs of enriched uranium by around 20%, they estimate, by shutting off Russian imports. The White House has advocated for a long-term ban on Russian imports, which is crucial to assessing the 2.7 billion allocated by Congress to establish a domestic uranium industry, which is contingent upon restrictions of the importation of Russian uranium. Hopefully the U.S. will have a domestic uranium industry. They'll stop importing uranium from Russia. The Russian state-controlled region of Luhansk Oblast, there are reports that mothers in hospitals are facing threats of having their newborns taken away if neither parent can prove Russian citizenship. This information was relayed by the Ukrainian head of the Luhansk Military Regional Association, Artem Lysohor, and was brought to light also by the Institute for the Study of War. According to Lisa Hoare, starting in May 6th, mothers giving birth in hospitals within the occupied territories will need to confirm that at least one parent holds Russian Federation citizenship in order to be discharged. If this is true, which we assume it is, this contravenes the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide. This includes imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Furthermore, officials of the Russian occupation are persisting in their efforts to militarize and indoctrinate young Ukrainians in occupied territories. Plans have been announced for the creation of a new textbook aligning with Russian educational standards, covering recent history in the occupied oblast. Notably, in the occupied cities of Berdyansk and Mariupol, in Zaporizhia, 200 children participated in military patriotic games organized by the Russian armed forces. These actions by the occupying forces are systematic endeavors to erode Ukrainian identity and forcibly impose Russian culture on the population within seized territories. Such actions may constitute acts of genocide against the Ukrainian people. And my last item this week is Governor Ivan Fedorov announced on May 1st that the Education Ministry has sanctioned the projects for the inaugural 5 underground schools in Zaporizhia Oblast. Kharkiv pioneered the concept, and that's what we're looking at here, the concept of underground schools as a measure to ensure uninterrupted offline education amid recurrent Russian assaults. The initiative took shape with the establishment of the first school within Kharkiv's metro. Given that the front line traverses both Zaporizhia and Kharkiv, both areas bear the brunt of frequent Russian attacks and shellings. The state has allocated a subsidy of around $12.6 million for the underground school projects. Fedorov disclosed that the tender for school construction will be announced this week. While 3 schools are slated for the construction in Zaporizhia, the remaining 2 will be situated elsewhere in the oblast. Fedorov refrained from specifying specifically when the schools will be completed. These newly erected institutions will serve as learning hubs for children from multiple districts in Zaporizhia as well as nearby settlements. Looking ahead, the local administration aims to erect a total of 10 underground schools. A February survey conducted by a Ukrainian polling agency revealed that 81% of students in frontline regions prefer to learn online over physical classrooms. Deputy Education Minister Yevhen Kudryavets highlighted that over 3,500 educational facilities have so far incurred damage since the start of the full-scale invasion, with nearly 400 of them facing near total destruction. And so that is all my news for this week. Is quite a bit of news. I didn't know we had so much else going on. So hopefully it wasn't too boring. I'll turn it over now, I believe, to Mr. German Aid to Ukraine himself for his report on what's going on with Germany. What's going on with those radars, man?
Jesus, these radars. Overhyped. No, I'm very glad. Very glad. Hello, everyone. We have a short segment this week, starting with Monday. And hold on a second. Video's not loading. Perfect. We're starting on Monday and the latest update by the German government on the recent deliveries of military aid to Ukraine. In the recent about 3 weeks, Germany has delivered the following military aid to Ukraine: 1 Skynex air defense system, 10 Marder 1A3 IFVs, 1 bridge-laying tank Biber, 6 Oshkosh M10 70 tank transporters, 1 Pioneer Panzer 2A1 DAX, 9 mine plows, 3,000 Matadors, 1 TRML 4D air surveillance radar, an unknown number of IRIS TSL missiles for the IRIS TSLM systems, nearly 30,000 rounds for the Gepard Sparks, ammunition for the Leopard 2 main battle tanks, 18,000 40mm rounds for automatic grenade launchers, an unspecific amount of 120mm mortar shells, 7,500 155 shells, 1 AMPS safe protection system for helicopters, 60 outboard motors, 600 light systems Falke. These are small medical lights for combat medics. About 2,000 camouflage nets, 2,000 likely camouflage ponchos, and 100,000 first aid kits. Well, that was a lot of military aid for the recent 3 weeks. Going on to the next item, the radars we're talking about. On Friday, the German defense company Hensoldt made public that they were contracted to deliver 6 additional TRM-4D air surveillance radars to Ukraine. The contract is worth over 100 million euros and will be fulfilled in full this year. A company spokesperson later told me personally that the German government is paying for these radars. And for those who are wondering, these are the exact radars which are also part of the Iris TSLM air defense system, and this is an additional delivery. And as a last item of this week, the CEO of Rheinmetall, Armin Pappberger, stated that in addition to a 6-digit number of regular artillery shells that Ukraine will receive from Rheinmetall this year, Rheinmetall will also supply prototypes of artillery shells with a range of around 100 kilometers. Sadly, he didn't talk about a specific amount, but I guess that's understandable. And yeah, that's all I had to say for this week. Short, but yeah, I hope you like it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, thanks for running everyone's back in this week as our Norwegian counterpart is indisposed. So I believe next we have Bionade, who's going to give us a brief report on some reconstruction efforts going on. Bionade, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, great. So I have shared my screen. So it should be visible.
Share your screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So we are gonna talk again about reconstruction projects and especially with the tool of the DREAM database, the digital restoration ecosystem for accountable management. We will have a little look in here. Joseph, you already mentioned something about schools and underground schools, and what I saw when I started filtering here. Let's choose the sector schools. Let's say secondary education, and we will see many projects.
Real quick, Bionade, what's this website? Can you let people know? dream.gov.ua?
Dream.gov.ua. Basically, it's all the reconstruction projects which are ongoing, how they are funded, what is happening there, all the documentation, what is needed, and what will be done. And we can see relatively often projects, new construction of a protective structure of civil defense in schools. So another protective structure. These are basically bunkers getting built near schools or in schools, so that people in areas where shelling is likely or when air raids a lot are happening, getting basically bunkers constructed and protective rooms, so they can be safe and still go to school. But these are not the projects I'm going to talk about today. Let's start with the first project I wanted to talk about, which is also a school. And this is the reconstruction of the building of the Lithuanian-Ukrainian Lyceum number 1. The title already gives it a bit away. This project is funded by the Lithuanian government, by Lithuania. They are helping to build this school. Let's read the abstract of this maybe. It helps us to understand it a little bit better. And Bordiansk Lyceum number 1 was damaged as a result of tank shelling and explosive wave, shelling from small caliber small arms of Russian military personnel, a large institution that provides educational services to 1/3 of the students of Borodyanka. More than 500 children studied in the educational institution before the full-scale invasion. It is not possible to place such a number of children in other institutions. The restoration of the institution is one of the important conditions for the return of residents to the destroyed village and the preservation of jobs for employees of the education sector. The construction is taking place with the financial support of the Ministry of Economy and the Innovation of the Republic of Lithuania. Therefore, a Bolian Settlement Council decided to call the Lyceum number 1 Lithuanian Ukrainian. Yeah. So we can already see some pictures here. Maybe let's see how the school looked before. Yeah, it's not really big, the picture, sadly. And yeah, it's a better picture. This is how the school looked before the full-scale invasion. These are the pictures of the damage, and you can see the Russians really, yeah, did their work there. And then we have now pictures. One picture, maybe it's not loading right. Here we go. Here we have pictures of the newly restored building. Like you can see, it's a modern, nice school building. Yeah, quite nice to see. So we have more pictures, I think. Yep. It's an arrow. Okay. Technical issue. Yeah, that's not good. So, give me a quick second. Yeah. Okay, wait, let's try it with a new link. If not, we're gonna move on to another project. But here we go. So, yeah, couple of more pictures here from the restored site. As you can see, this is basically now the new restored school. Yeah, a little bit to the whole thing. You can see which organizations were involved. Yeah, different contexts, the budget, basically, how much it costs, and where the funding came from international funds, and the countries involved were Lithuania with these funds. So this is basically an whole effort of Lithuania to help Ukraine rebuild its infrastructure. Quite a nice project, Borodyanka. I think it's it's in the Kiev region. Yeah. Okay. Project number 1, rebuilding. Number 2 is this project. The project name is not really, yeah, this understandable. It's basically they built a new ward for the rehabilitation of internationally displaced people or persons and veterans and persons with disabilities in this regional hospital. Basically, here are some more information, which is not that interesting for us to read out, but there are a lot of people with diseases or which need rehabilitation. So they basically built in this hospital a new ward for the rehabilitation and equipped the whole thing. Let's look which organizations were involved. Yeah, investment object. Here we can see a couple of pictures. The budget, which was there, that's fully funded. The budget comes from international funds, from donor funds. So this is basically a project which was funded by donations. And here can we see the pictures before. People started working here.
And
This
that
is
symbol for the
illustration.
budget, Binare, was hryvnia, is that right? So 2.5
Yes.
million hryvnia, so about 64,000 US dollars. Sorry, I just want to
Yes,
convert.
yes, basically, in this area. So, and basically you can see here how it's looking now, from this, unused part of the building. They basically built here now a nice center for rehabilitation, so that they can help the people, cope with their problems and illnesses and have, this really nice rehabilitation ward. So the next project is a project in the area of housing construction. This is a project in Bucha. The overhaul of I think the translation railway is here wrong. I think it's about the rail lining of the roof, and the roof which was destroyed as a result of the military aggression at Bucha. Yeah. This building was damaged by the Russians. Like we can read here, this 3-story building put in operation in 1977 has 3 entrances. Total area of the building, and other informations. So now we can see here again, financial coverage is already 100%. This worked out. We can see here basically the project partners are not available. Bit to the contacts. The budget here was 7.6 million hryvnia. I think it's
About 193,000
yeah
US dollars.
around $200,000, right? The funding came from public funds. That's from the funds for the liquidation of the consequences of the armed aggressions. So Ukraine has a special fund for this. There are different programs we talked about where you can apply to get money from the Ukrainian government for rebuilding projects like this. Here we have some documents and documentation, so who's into this can look into this. And here we basically have some pictures of the restoration happening. The roof is getting repaired, and this building will be usable again. All right. So now we're coming to the last project. It's a reconstruction of a detached building of the communal institution, the educational gymnasium number 11.
And a gymnasium is a school.
A gymnasium. It's a school, like a high school, I would say, in the US, right? It's where you get the higher education. So this building was basically financed by the European Investment Bank. They wrote a nice article about this on their website. The dream isn't updated yet completely because this, like you can see, this just happened 2 weeks ago, right? So sometimes it takes a bit after they update all the information. I'm not sure if this building was damaged or if they just wanted to renovate this. But it's another example of Ukraine rebuilding things. So maybe let's find out. International organizations sponsored the funding. Yep. Contracts and pictures. And basically this was the idea how it should look. And I think in this article, no, not here. There was another article. I sadly did not have it yet. Yeah, here's another picture how the school is more or less looking now. So yeah, the renovation was successful, and you can see many happy Ukrainian school children here back in the school. All right, these were basically examples of Ukraine rebuilding things and where the funding is coming from. If you want to try it out, they have this beautiful website here, dream.gov.ua. You have different possibilities either to filter through these filters, or you can also go through the communities and look up a community and yeah, how many projects are happening there. So if we just randomly go on page 5, if it loads, we could see that in this area, in Lvivska Oblast, these projects happening, right? So very useful website. They also have, I think, a Power BI link. So if you like into yeah, data analytics, then you can also use the Power BI tool which they have and can work with the data. All right, was it about rebuilding Ukraine. If you have any questions, yeah, feel free to ask.
I think it's just like a good example of Ukrainian approach to transparency, right? They clearly recognize. I really think they're kind of pioneers in this kind of public transparency stuff when it comes to these types of things. To publish a website like this.
Yeah, and also the Ukrainian society is like, at least as a German, I have to say it's like highly digitalized. Yeah, it's often missing here in the German bureaucratic process, and yeah, the transparency is often missing or not that easily accessible like this website. So I think Ukraine is yeah, with these kind of tools, you really ensure people that everything what is meant to happen with the money is happening, and yeah, so useful projects which they're investing there in. And maybe we can go back quickly to the screen share. If we go under sectors, it's from agriculture, fishing, and forestry, over communications, infrastructure, education, energy extractors, transmission, renewable energy, other energy, public administration for energy, solar energy, the financial sector, healthcare, industry, trade and services, other sectors, public administration, social protection, aviation, transportation, railways, rural, inter and urban roads, urban transportation, water and sanitation and water supply. So waste management even. So you can basically look up any kind of sector you're interested in and see what Ukraine, what are the projects, and if it's all updated good, you can see often pictures of what is happening, what will be done, who are the contractors, and yeah, even documentation yeah, from officials about these things. So it's quite a transparent yeah, approach.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. Last week there was a talk about the ProZorro platform in Ukraine, which is like a public like procurement platform for the government. Like I don't know if the government needs, I don't know, ambulances or tourniquets or other random government pencils. I don't know. Then they go on this website. Everything's public. It's all bid, right? Like I don't know, it just reminds me of that, right? So it just strikes me that we have a very highly digital society that is very interested in anti-corruption and transparency. We should probably be taking notes, is all I would say about that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we've covered all the segments today. Am I missing anything? Go to Q&A.
I don't think so. Yes, Q&A if any questions, but I don't think that you miss anything.
Cool. I was hoping usually Daniela stops by around this time. I was hoping he would stop by and he could give us, because I think he published a drone article. Is that right, Jonathan?
Yes, Daniela published an update on his FPV research for April, which people can find on the Tochnyi website.
Yeah, so head on over to tochnyi.info. Check out if you like Daniela's research on FPV drones, and of course, he does aggregation and analysis of the data that Andrew, Perpetua, and Git collect, as well as many new faces in the basement. We're hearing some good news about more people, because it's gotten really bad, right? Like at the beginning of the war, there was like 1/10 of the videos, and if you imagine like every new video that comes out, they have to cross-check it with every existing video to make sure it doesn't already exist, right? So like every new video, it's exponentially more difficult to verify it, and there's like a magnitude more every week. So it's pretty crazy what they do. So it's good to hear that they're getting some more bodies in there to parse through all that stuff. So hopefully we'll get like a more substantial update from Daniela next week about his new research on the drone stuff. It's I think some of the work that Tochnyi's most recognized for. So like a lot of respect to Andrew and Gick and Daniela, and Jonathan also helps edit those articles. So great job from everyone on the team doing that stuff. If anyone has any questions in the chat, I guess we'll start heading over to the questions. I think we'll just start with a question I see from Kellen right here. Any updates on more Patriots to Ukraine and Italy's SAMT announcements? So let's start with the SAMT stuff. I'm going to, I guess, direct this to first Maurice, then Colby. Maurice, I think I saw you asking about it and getting some information about it on this, when we were discussing it. So could you just give a general overview of the whole Italy SAMT stuff?
Oh, I actually I saw news of it, but I am really the wrong person to
Maybe we defer to
ask
Colby
about
then.
that question.
Mr. Colby, sir, are you there? Let's consult the oracle.
Excuse me, sorry. I'm here, yes. SAMT, not an announcement unless I'm missing some news that I haven't
What was
seen.
the news, Maurice? Could you at least you're
No,
more
Jesus
familiar with
Christ.
the news?
No. I mean, there is news, but I'm making a distinction here. It's news, not an announcement, right?
Okay,
So
got it.
Italian media, I believe, pretty sure it was Italian media, reported that Italy would provide an additional SAMT battery to Ukraine. But that was not something that was confirmed by any Italian officials, to my knowledge. So again, maybe I'm missing something that I haven't seen, but I just saw media reports, and I don't even recall which publication it was. Sorry, go ahead.
I have the article in front of me from the Italian media, and it says that Meloni is ready to present the 980 package to Kyiv, and there are also SAMT, and the government should give to Ukraine the battery that was in Slovakia. And of course, there is a bit of discussions within the government in Italy because, Meloni is really pro-Ukraine, at least in her speakings, but some others in the coalition are not, so it's not official. But you have also to keep in mind that Italy has never announced officially what has provided to Ukraine. So probably we will never have an official announcement, but the signals are positive. And the newspaper announced this is called Il Foglio, which is pretty one of the best one reporting about Ukraine.
I find it it might be a bit off topic, but I find it really crazy when this SAMT, if it's going to happen or not, is not of interest now from my point. But if the SAMT is really stationed in Slovakia, how many air defense systems have different NATO countries stationed in in Slovakia. Because when you remember, early during the war, Slovakia handed over an S-300 battery to Ukraine. And I believe the US, Netherlands, and Germany have both stationed a Patriot system in return in Slovakia for like a year or something. I don't know if the US system is still there. Colby can maybe say something about it. I don't know if the Dutch system is still there, but the German one is already in Germany again. We donated two Mantis systems similar to Skynex to Ukraine, to Slovakia in return. So when Italy is going to have stationed a SMT battery in Slovakia, that really, I really question how many air defense systems different NATO countries have stationed in Slovakia and why. Because that's a lot. I mean, it's 3 Patriot systems, SMT system. Am I just seeing something wrong, or because that seems crazy to me? Joseph, Colby, please, anyone.
I think that the American Patriots that were in Slovakia have also been withdrawn. I may be incorrect about that, but I recall seeing media reports that they were going to be pulled out. There's at least 2 Patriot batteries in Poland, if I understand correctly. And UCOM has 1 battalion, so should be 4 batteries in that 1 battalion, with at least 2 of them are in Poland. So I don't know if there is any air defense in Slovakia right now. I think the Dutch might still have 1 battery there. I seem to recall some people talking about that. So maybe the Dutch still, but the US battery was withdrawn, I believe. But in general, I mean, yes, NATO countries, there are a number of air defense systems in our possession. But aside from Germany, nobody is willing to provide any of these to Ukraine, including the United States, beyond what was already committed. U.S. obviously gave 1 battery, Germany gave 2 and is now going to give a 3rd, but no other Patriot operators, which include Spain and Sweden. Netherlands obviously sent a couple launchers, but wasn't willing to provide a battery. But this wouldn't be necessary if orders had just been placed 2 years ago, right? I mean, nobody would be in the difficult position of having to decide whether they're going to provide any of their own systems out of their inventory if orders were just placed. And I know some European countries, including Germany and the Netherlands, have stated that they would be willing to buy systems for Ukraine. But here we are, more than 2 years into the war, and we can't even manage to do that. There's been no agreement on the part of the Biden administration to either sign any of those contracts themselves with their own money or negotiate a deal with European countries who would be willing to finance that procurement to place some new orders with Raytheon. None of that has happened. And I don't understand why it hasn't happened.
To be clear, like Raytheon has said they have the production capacity to make them. They're just not getting an order for it, right?
Raytheon has facilitization to do 1 battery per month, but facilitization is not actual production capacity because you need to have labor and you need to have supply chain. And they have neither of those things because you're not going to invest in labor and supply chain to max out your facilitization unless there's orders. And Raytheon doesn't have orders for 12 batteries. And even if they did, they would need orders, right? Because you're not going to max out your production and then build a year's worth of orders and then have no orders left over, because then your investment is wasted, right? So Raytheon needs dozens of orders on the book in order for it to be viable for them to make investments. And again, it would take quite some time for them to establish the labor and the supply chain to even get to that point. But they could, it's a start, right? As soon as they get the orders, and they could actually start planning on, okay, how much can we scale up, how quickly? But again, it all takes time, and 2 years have been wasted. So the next best time to do it is today, right? If it wasn't going to be done yesterday, if it wasn't going to be done 2 years ago, which is when it should have been done, it should be done today. But we're still, for some reason, there's just some sort of impasse where it's not something that's being done for whatever reason. So it's just it's bewildering. I don't know what to say anymore at this point in time. I feel like we're beating the dead horse here.
Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough.
and
So I think, like, in summary, no update on the Patriot thing. Go ahead, Maurice.
yeah, I just wanted to because Kobe briefly talked about it, like Germany and other countries saying we could buy Patriots. When you remember, not you, but everyone here remembers that like 3 or 4 weeks ago, so last month or maybe in March, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock talked about it, that Germany is setting up a fund and working with close partners, G7 and other European partners, on filling these funds to actually buy Patriot systems for Ukraine. And about a week or 2 weeks later, the German initiative, the Immediate Action on Air Defense Initiative, came out. And it's just, I mean, the initiative is called Immediate Action on Air Defense, which aims to provide Ukraine with air defense in the short term. And after like 2 or 3 weeks, we are staying at I believe 350 million euros, and the Patriot battery provided by Germany. That's all. So 350 million euros, although that's a lot of money, but for air defense systems, in
It's one
particular, you could,
battery. It's
yeah,
one Patriot battery, maybe without missiles, just the system itself.
yeah, and that's, I don't know. I really don't, because the main goal is to buy, or when the announcement was made, the main goal was to buy existing Patriot batteries, which didn't have to produce first. Buy existing Patriot batteries for Ukraine and deliver them to Ukraine. So you just need to train the troops basically, and then deliver the system. And it could be in Ukraine in like 1 month, 2 months, basically, when the training is done. But with 350 million euros, sounds like a lot of money, but to buy Patriot systems for Ukraine is, Jesus Christ, that's nothing. I really don't know. Kobe, what would you do? Would you rather buy a lot of missiles and maybe spare parts or other air defense equipment rather than one single battery without missiles?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And I put out a tweet the other day along these lines, and a lot of people were getting angry because they struggle to read, I guess, because the Kyiv Independent had a post saying, "Oh, new Skynex systems from Germany. These are much cheaper than Patriot."
Oh yeah, Jesus.
And yes, yeah, of course, Skynex is cheaper than Patriot. It's just like a totally different system. You're comparing apples to oranges. Not even. It's like the comparison there is even more tenuous. And just people don't understand. And I said explicitly, like, yes, Skynex is a very good system at what it is designed to do. And yes, we all understand that Ukraine needs systems like Skynex to shoot down things like Shaheds. That's very important, and we all understand this. But a lot of people just fail to grasp that we shouldn't be comparing these two things in the same sentence, really, under any circumstances, because what Skynex can do is very different from what Patriot can do. And Ukraine faces a lot of very higher order threats from Russia, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles. And Patriot is the only system that can actually really effectively deal with that threat. So we can give Ukraine 1,000 Skynexes. It would not remove the need for additional Patriots. And 1,000 Skynexes would be great. It's never going to happen because Skynex is being produced at a very low production rate as well. That would be super helpful for Ukraine, but it still wouldn't solve the problem of all the ballistic missiles that are being fired at them. And it would not solve the problem of Russia's fighter bombers executing glide bomb strikes on Ukrainian positions in the front line. Patriot's the only thing that's actually going to solve that problem. The only system. That's just the reality of the situation. F-16s will not even solve that problem either, for all the reasons which we have spoken about at length on this topic. So, yes, Patriot is very, very important. That money should be used to finance Patriot, so long as it can actually be done. Like, if it's clear that a deal can't be reached for whatever reason, which is absurd, again, that there's no reason it can't. But if they can't manage to place orders for new Patriots or buy Patriots off somebody, then yeah, spend the money on something else. But Ukraine absolutely needs more Patriots. This is their number one ask from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense right now is for additional Patriots. It's their highest priority for a reason, because there's no other system that can do what it can do. And I will say the one silver lining here is the Israeli Patriots, right? So it was reported that Israel is very shortly going to be removing all of its Patriot batteries from frontline service, which is something that they have been planning on doing for some time now. But I was a little bit surprised to see it happening already, especially in the middle of a war. But Israel wants to use Iron Dome and David Sling instead. They feel that those are better systems for their own needs, which is true. Israel's Patriots are not super well optimized for the IDF's needs and the threat spectrum that it faces. So that's a reasonable decision on their part to make that switch. So if those Patriots are being removed from service, Israel would be much better off with money for those systems than just keeping them in storage. That's a much better deal for Israel, because if countries are willing to buy those systems off of them, those dollars can be used to reinvest in the capabilities that they do want. They can buy more Iron Dome, they can buy more David Sling, they can buy more batteries, they can buy more interceptors for both. Israel has a very high priority need for new Arrow interceptors, so they need money for all of that. So if Germany and other countries are willing to buy those systems off of Israel, and Israel has about 7 batteries, 6 to 8, but we'll call it 7. It's a little bit unclear exactly, but that's a significant number, and that's basically how many Ukraine is saying that they urgently need in the short term, is 7 or 8 batteries, and Israel has that. So some of those are ex-German batteries. They're from the Bundeswehr, and some of them are American batteries. So it seems logical that the United States and Germany and what other countries are willing to participate in this scheme would come together and say, hey, Israel, can we buy these back off of you so that we can send them to Ukraine? That should be the top priority right now. For all available funds that can be scrounged up, that's what should be done, because it is Ukraine's top priority need.
It's a
The
good
big
plan,
question.
Colby. Have they
Sorry.
expressed any? Oh, go ahead, Maurice.
No, I just want to say the question I have, or I had in mind the recent days, since I saw this article that Israel is going to sell off or deactivate whatever the Patriot systems, is we all know that Israel is so far blocking military aid to Ukraine. And the question I have, of course, it's not an Israeli system. It's not made in Israel. It's I think when I read that correctly, it was specifically modified, right, for the Israeli needs. But it's not an Israeli system. Do you think they still would sell these systems so when they know that they're going to be provided to Ukraine? Because, like I said, so far they're blocking Israeli-made military aid to Ukraine, even though other countries have bought the aid. For example, the Jesus Christ, I can't remember the name. Germany, for example, wants to or wanted to deliver specific ammunition and what is it? Melts? No, not melts. Jesus.
Spike
Anyways,
or something else.
Yeah, for the Mardos, basically, there's ammunition which you
The
can
Spike
use.
anti-tank guided missiles, is that what you're referring to? Or it's something for the cannon?
Maybe it's something anti-tank. I can't figure
Spike
out.
then, probably.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I will research it later. But they're blocking this, for example. But Germany bought it, right? And they're still blocking it. So my question now is, do you think that they would agree to deliver these Patriots to Ukraine, even though some other countries have bought it off of them, just because these are not Israeli made? Do you think that would make a big difference for them?
Well, quite some time ago, it was reported that Israel was in fact allowing certain technology transfers to occur. Perhaps not all things, but certain things that they were quietly approving. They just didn't want that to be well publicly advertised. So I think that there are things happening that just people are not aware of, because the Israeli government just made an assessment that it was in their own strategic interest to not potentially antagonize Russia. I think that's I think that they have been far too overly cautious in this regard and are very much underestimating the cards that they hold in this equation with their relationship with Russia. But setting all that aside, post October 7th, a lot of people have commented that they see some signs of Israel's position here shifting, given the very close cooperation between Iran and Russia, and that there's going to be some policy changes. So I've seen nothing concrete about what the Israeli government's going to do. I don't have any special insight, but I think that the chances of this happening are increasing, not decreasing. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a question of money. Ultimately, is that, you know, if there's money on the table here, they're not going to turn that up. I don't expect Israel to just donate these out of the goodness of their own heart. I don't expect that to happen. That'd be great if it did, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. There's a lot of countries that take this approach. They're really not willing to donate a whole lot to Ukraine, but they're willing to make money out of this if there are willing buyers for the things they have on offer. Greece is another good example where Greece has donated some things to Ukraine, but a lot of stuff they want to just sell it to people who are willing to buy it on Ukraine's behalf. I would put Israel in the same category. So for them, the chance of getting money for those Patriot batteries and then using that money to buy things that they actually want, I think it would be very unwise for them to turn that opportunity up. So I think it's imperative that we can come together here and finance the procurement of those batteries. And if the price is right, I think they'll probably be willing to sell quietly, of course. Indirectly, it won't go straight to Ukraine. It'll get sent to somebody else, and then somebody else can send it, or there might have to be some ring deal backfilling agreement like we've seen in the past, where the batteries stay in a different country, but then that country gives up their own systems to send to Ukraine. You know, that might need to be a condition of this sale happening. But I think it's our best chance right now to get Ukraine the Patriots that they need, because as we've seen, nobody seems to be willing to give up any more of their Patriots that they own. And for whatever reason, again, in the United States, even though there was a Pentagon official, Assistant Secretary Wallander, said that they would be willing to consider placing new orders of Patriot batteries for Ukraine, it still hasn't happened. And they announced a $6 billion USAI package, and new Patriot systems were not a line item in that commitment, which again, it's just bewildering. I don't know who it is in the Biden administration, whether it's the president himself or somebody else, has just decreed that no, we're not going to order any of these for Ukraine. They got one, and that's all they're going to get. So Israel seems like the only option really right now to me. Sorry, long-winded answer.
No, it's totally fine. Thanks for that. And also, just for information, we were both correct. I was talking about Spike LR, and in the Bundeswehr, it's called Melz. So we were both right. Yeah, that's my question. Sorry.
So
it was a long
assume
conversation.
Yeah, no worries. I assume you would have mentioned this, Cole, but there's been no noise from any U.S. or European side in terms of like doing this, right?
About buying from Israel?
Yeah.
I haven't seen any,
like a check ammo scheme, you know?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen any official comments. Again, I may be missing something, and this is why I always ask people, Europeans in particular. You know, there's 30 different countries in Europe. I don't speak any of those languages, so please do, everybody, read your own national media and tell us what's happening in your countries, because it's impossible to keep track of everything. But I have not seen anything that that this is something that is already underway. And again, I would expect it to happen behind closed doors, and that's where it should happen, right? Because the Israelis are not going to want this to happen super publicly. So I'm just going to hope that there's already things happening behind closed doors that we're not aware of.
I firmly believe that Germany is already talking to them, because the German government, although they didn't mention all the countries they were talking to, besides like for example Belgium or the Netherlands, which are contributing to the German initiative, they were saying that they are talking to countries in Asia, in the Middle East, and Far East, and all these countries. And I think Israel is one of them. I truly believe that from the regions they were talking about.
Okay, and Colby, so as not to break your streak, last question, Colby. Do we know anything about what's going on with the Canadian donated NASAM? Asked Matthew Whitmore.
There's been no new updates that I've seen. As I keep saying, it should have never been ordered in the first place. The United States already has a large number of NASAM's batteries on order from Raytheon. So Canada adding one more to the queue doesn't help Ukraine, right? It's years potentially, although we don't have good visibility into what's going on with NASAM's production right now. Because I've tried to get answers, but nobody is willing to provide any details on what's going on with Sentinel production, which is the radar that these NASAM's batteries use. Kongsberg in Norway makes the fire direction center, which controls the whole system. They make the launchers. Raytheon makes the radar and the missiles, AMRAAM missiles. So the limiting factor here seems to be the radars, because Kongsberg has said that they are producing the FDCs at a very significant rate, and the launchers are not complicated either. They're producing both of those quite quickly. So the Department of Defense, back when they were making their second commitment of another 6 NASAMs on top of the initial 2, which arrived relatively quickly, they had assessed that those would not be completed, I believe, until close to the end of this year. And then on top of that, there's already several more that they committed. I think there were at least 4 others that they were ordering. So based on the available information, the rate limiting factor here with the delivery, the production and delivery of those systems would be the radars. But again, there's not as much information as I would like. But I haven't seen any new updates on this. So all I can keep saying is that it's likely years away. The money should have never been committed to that. It was quite foolish. It would have been much better spent on Canada's own domestic ammunition industry. That 400 million Canadian that was committed by the government to that procurement could be financing the establishment of M795 155 millimeter artillery shell production in Canada, and that would have been far more beneficial if that was something that had been acted upon earlier on in the war. Then we could be seeing some dividends potentially from that very soon. So
one of these days, Canada will step up. Okay, do we see any other questions in chat, guys?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I mean, I guess we can wrap the stream. We're at 2 hours. Any closing thoughts that we want to give the audience before we head out?
Not from my side.
I was going to say, Joseph, we've covered a lot of research into Mariupol this episode. Rebuilding of infrastructure destroyed. It's Ukrainian Easter. So why don't we finish with Taras Shevchenko's words, which are, "Whoever does not lose heart and does not cry, such a person also never rejoices." Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava.
On behalf of the brave.